Okay, so Teresa, welcome. And Teresa is an early years program lead from the National Children's Bureau. And as I say, please do pop any questions in that chat function if you can, if it's enabled for you and you can, please do. And we'll be able to take it from there. I know that Samantha is now with us, but Samantha, we've just moved on to the next speaker, and I'm hoping you're okay to wait for a little while. And we're going to listen to Teresa, and Teresa has worked in the early years sector for several years, starting out as a nanny, then a residential social worker and registered childminder. So this led her to work for the Professional Association for Childcare in Early Years, PACEY, for 18 years before joining the National Children's Bureau, where she is now. And in this role, as Early Years Programme Lead, she is responsible for the delivery of the Early Years Stronger practice hubs. There are 18 hubs in England, offering support and advice to improve quality in early years settings, sharing good practice, and offering evidence-informed professional development. The programme is funded by the Department for Education until March 2026. And of course, we all hope that this will continue with the amazing work that it's already been showing to do. So the focus of Teresa's presentation will be on her professional journey to date and how this work impacts outcomes for children and the role that the National Children's Bureau has in influencing policy, improving practice and involving children and young people. I know that we're all going to be so inspired, Teresa, by what you are going to share with us today. I'm moving on.
Thanks, Janet. Thank you. Just to also say, I haven't got access to the chat, so just in case I can't see that at the moment, but that's okay. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. I really feel like I have to, step up now. So
that is you. So there you go. Be proud.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you. So yes, as Janet said, I'm Teresa Johnson, and I was reflecting really on the joy of early years, really, and I'm thinking about that in terms of the privileged position we are in when we are working with our youngest children, but also, prior to that, families, during maternity and the kind of those first 1001 days that we know are so crucial. So we are incredibly privileged. I feel incredibly privileged to be at the coalface. And also, I think we have a massive responsibility to inject joy also to the children that we're working with. And I know that's tough sometimes because we are living in a pretty tricky time, aren't we? But it's important for us to find our own joy and be able to share that and to be really role modeling that with our children as well. So scarily, when you reflect on your career path, and Janet and I have a lot of history, don't we, Janet? But I wasn't really working out the years until I was kind of doing this presentation and realised it was actually 40 years ago that I was at college doing my first course, which was back in the day was called Home Economics for Family and Community Care. And the home economics thing, honestly, there was a lot of ironing and cooking involved, fabulous. But more important than that was the opportunity to experience a range of different care type roles, if you like. So I had the opportunity to go to Great Ormond Street and work as a play leader. I had the opportunity to work in a residential school for children with special educational needs. And I also had the opportunity to work in a maintained nursery setting. So I had this kind of huge range of choices to me, really, to think, actually, which of these areas do I really, which ones am I driven towards, which ones really resonate with me? And I have to say, I liked all of them actually for different reasons. So I think just if you look at this kind of this graphic, if you like, I started off as a nanny and I kind of went clockwise round in terms of different roles that I had. But children and then working with elderly, doing some home care work, then working with children with special educational needs in both residential care and also daycare as well, until I got to having my own children, and then I became a registered childminder, because it's kind of like it does a bit of a full circle and you think, okay, this is all fabulous stuff, but now I've got my own children, I think I need to do something slightly different. And all of those touch points, if you like, were at the point, or kind of at the coalface, so working directly with children or adults and families. And then if you look at the second half of my circle, if you like, I then moved into those roles which were supporting the adults that support the children. So I kind of was one step away, but having a more strategic view on, okay, so what is it that the sector needs to be able to do a really, really good job? And that's kind of how I shifted from doing that work, you know, directly with children and families, to thinking about what do the people that are doing that need. And that's a journey, if you like, that I think a lot of people who work in the sector do, for all sorts of reasons. It doesn't mean that you don't care less. In fact, you probably care more, and you're much more kind of in a position of authority to be able to influence some of that. And in some of the roles I had with Pacey, we kind of went down a qualifications pathway route in order to ensure that childminders had accessible qualifications that met their needs particularly. And Janet and I worked really closely to develop those qualifications and their iterations over the years. So I feel really privileged to be able to do that and have done that in my role as well. And so when I left Pacey, I was doing various roles, but also kind of thinking of the value of partnerships. And you do that kind of in your early years roles as well. You kind of pull on health, you pull on social care, you pull on education and teaching staff. But actually in a different type of role, you then pull in people like Department for Work and Pensions, and you pull in Department for Education, and you pull in other charities that are going to help you to support the sector in a broader way. And then that leads me into National Children's Bureau, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that role in a moment. So can I have the next slide, Janet? Because I think really we do all this wonderful stuff, and there's a lot of questions for me about, so why? What difference does it make? The so what question that I actually ask myself and have always asked myself, because, you know, there are so many programs out there, aren't there? So many interventions, so many wonderful things that are kind of available to us when we're working directly with children and families. And we might say to ourselves, oh, there's so much choice. I don't, you know, why would I do this? What is it that's going to make, what is it about this particular program that I'm going to deliver that's going to make a difference? And that's where the evidence comes in. That's where we kind of go, actually, we need to just check this out, make sure this is a sound program. And what does the evidence say that if I do this, if I do these things with children, it's going to make a difference? So that's why I should be doing it. But when I look back on all my roles, I think particularly when you're working directly with children, the ability to recognize their next steps, your sound understanding of child development, and how kind of working from their interests, how you're going to move them forward, what are their next steps, and really kind of supporting children's development, I think has a massive impact on those children. And you are privileged to be able to do that. You can only do it with the skills and knowledge, can't you? You can't wing it. You can't pretend it's working well. You really do need that sound foundation of knowledge to be able to do that and to continue to build on it. I don't know everything there is to know about early years and childcare, still don't, after 40 years. So every day is a school day. Every day you're learning something new. You know, you have to continue to support children in that way. You have to keep children safe, don't you? So you need, you know, your impact on keeping children safe. And that's not just about risk assessing. It's about understanding child protection. It's about recognising what the policies are saying and how you're going to implement them. And the privilege of being able to form those really secure bonds with children so they have that safe base to work from. You know, that is having a massive impact on children's ability to learn and to do well in their work. Modelling is really important. So when I was talking about joy early on, if we're not joyful in our interactions, then children are looking at us, aren't they? They're learning from us, and they're learning from our body language and the way we speak. So injecting that joy is really important. And being curious, I think, as early as practitioners, curiosity is a fabulous thing, and being in tune, of course, with children. And I think when you think about adults, if you're working with children, you're working with their families too, and families are looking to you for some inspiration. They're looking for you for advice. They're looking for you for all sorts of things. So we have an impact, although we might be working directly with a child or, you know, several key children, we are impacting their families and their parents and carers as well. So we do have that. And when my role shifted from children to adults, then obviously there's an impact in terms of those people's roles and their way in which they're developing their qualifications and their kind of career pathways as well. So I think that there's a lot of so what's that going on, and it's a really good question to ask yourself as you go through your early years career. So next slide, Janet. I'm mindful of time because I'm likely to get stuck on a rant, on a soapbox. So in my role at, so a little bit about National Children's Bureau. If you don't already know about them, go and have a little look. We've been around a long time, not quite as long as, well, longer than I've been working in early years, but it's the right way around. But we're an organisation, we're a charity, and ultimately we're about influencing policy. And we do that using evidence. There's no point in trying to influence policy if you haven't got something to back it up with. So we absolutely use research and evidence to do that. We're really good at collaborating. We collaborate with lots of other organisations in order to make our voice stronger. It's about amplifying the voice and trying to drive and push forward change. So that's a big part of what we do. We're also about improving practice, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. And another thing is about involving children and young people, because children and young people's voices have to be heard in order to influence policy as well. So it's not about being done to, it's about those children and young people being able to tell us what it means, what are their lived experiences, what does it mean to be in the systems, and how can we help and influence that. So we've done a joint open letter to the Prime Minister, which is calling on them. We've got a spending review next week. So that's when the government lays out their plan and to get them to think about that investment in early years. And we all know why that's important. And it's not just about money, it's about a longer term vision for children. So that's kind of one of our kind of key drivers. So on the next slide, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what we do within the Early Childhood Unit. So we are a part of the National Children's Bureau. And we have a range of programmes. Janet talked at the beginning about the kind of the home learning environment and the value in what practitioners do, how they support parents really in supporting their children at home and making it real. Real stands for raising early achievement in literacy, and it's an evidence-based home learning program that is about those low cost activities that you can do with families that make a difference. So that's a really a valuable program that we deliver, and we deliver that via family hubs and local authorities. Early Years Stronger Practice Hubs I'll talk to you about in a second. There's also something called the Healthy Early Years London programme, and that's an accreditation scheme run by the Mayor and Greater London Authority, and that's for early years settings in London to take part in. And it's about health across the piece, so about children's physical health, but also emotional health, and how you as a setting are supporting those children. And you get gold, bronze, silver, the other way around, some order, award system to be able to achieve that. Your Baby and You is another programme which is for families, so it's about recognition of the early interventions and the work that families do with their very young baby to support their early language and learning. Natural Thinkers is about outdoor space, so it's another programme where we are taking settings and using the outdoor environment to support early learning and development. And we also do some work in Northern Ireland, so nice to have Northern Ireland's colleagues here. And that work is around public health and supporting infant mental health. We're busy, aren't we? And finally, we have the National Quality Improvement Network, which is bringing together all of the local authorities and the early years leads in those local authorities to share learning and to kind of try to influence policy that way too. Finally, just a little bit about Early Years Stronger Practice Hubs. So again, a call to action for you is that if you go to the link, the Stronger Practice Hubs links, there is a website. And as Janet said at the beginning, there are 18 hubs in 9 of the government regions, so 2 in each region, and they are led by a lead setting who is a good or outstanding setting, and they have partners, so they have childminder partners, PVI and Maintain Nursery partners, and they are delivering free a huge range of resources, so even to support your qualifications and some of the work you're doing, you'll find a great amount of resource on there. So blogs, case studies, recorded webinars, those sorts of things. So please do go along and have a look at those. I think that's me, Janet, and I've just got a question slide. So if anybody has anything they want to pop in the chat, although I can't see the chat, but if I can see the chat then, or somebody can ask me a question. So thank you, everybody. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm just mindful of time.
Teresa, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so, so much. And if anybody does have questions and they're finding it frustrating to get on the chat because it's not enabled for them, please do write those questions down. I'll make sure that I will share when the slides go out, we'll share contact details for myself, and I can reach out to our wonderful presenters as well to make sure that you get your questions answered. So thank you, Teresa. One thing that resonates there with me is the fact that it was the start of the journey, as it certainly was with me and other colleagues that I know are on the call, where you develop those skills. So you are on this journey right now. If you are studying for an early years or childcare or T level, which children's care, learning and development, whatever qualification you're learning within this sector, this is the start of a journey where you will learn the most, because you will learn about working with others, you'll learn about the significance of families, and you're going to also learn about the skills and the knowledge that you need to be able to apply that when you're working with the babies and the children and the families that you work with. So thank you, Teresa, for sharing your amazing journey and for everything that you do and that you've done and that you continue to do for the sector. Thank you so much. So Faye, facilitating outdoor play, national and international perspectives. I can't wait to hear all about this. And Faye's presentation today is going to explore the importance of outdoor play in early childhood education, with a focus on supporting children's connection to nature and the facilitation of free flow play between indoor and outdoor environments. It's not just about opening a door, is it, Faye? So this is interesting. So we're going to draw on both, or Faye will draw on both national practice and international approaches, and examine how different cultures value and implement outdoor learning. Participants will reflect, so you'll be able to see practical strategies to create seamless transitions between these spaces, nurture children's natural curiosity, and develop environments that support holistic development. We all feel differently when we're outside, don't we? So I can't wait to hear and share that passion with people in terms of enriching our outdoor experiences in their own settings and through the work that they're doing as students. Over to you, Faye.
Thank you so much, Janet, and it is an absolute pleasure to be with everyone. I'm Faye Cole, Curriculum Manager at South West College, and we are based in Northern Ireland, covering County Tyrone and Fermanagh. I can see my colleagues from SRC are here in Northern Ireland as well, so it's really nice that this is for nationwide conference this morning and to be with the students. So my role at the college is as a specialist for early years, but I also look after curriculum areas such as health and social care, sports, social work, applied science, and our SEN provision as well. So there's a lot to do, but it really is a delight to be here with you with that early years focus. Janet, I'll just move on to that next slide. So who am I? I began my career as an apprentice, so I maybe wasn't that focused at school. I had a few blips during my teenage years and hadn't found my space. And my mummy told me I needed to get a job, and I thought, right, I need to get this sorted. And I found an apprenticeship route. I loved children, I loved working with children, and that was what began my career. And since then, I won't say how many years, but I have been studying ever since then and have become a lifelong learner. So for those of you who are starting on this journey, welcome. And for those of us that are maybe longer in it, it's a wonderful sector to be in. So it really is wonderful to join everyone. As I said, my main role is supporting the curriculum. So we run levels 1 up to level 7 and 8 here at the college. So we do offer the degree programs as well. And it really is a privilege to join students. You know, I maybe meet students when they're 14, and I've been here long enough to stay with them on their journey until they're maybe starting their own families or, you know, working as managers. So we have a really good connection with our local community, which is really important in our local settings. I am a play advocate. I sit on the board for an organisation called Playboard, who are our lead organisation for play in Northern Ireland. I love to play. and I think community is really important. I am also an author, so I have some publications on intergenerational practice, on project-based learning, and one that is due to be in with the publishers on Play in June. So, you know, I love to do that research, and it's all very much about practical strategies on what works for us. And on this slide here, this is some of our students this year going out to do a sponsored walk with all their dogs and everyone in tow. So we like to get out there and do the practical side of it as well. So I'm here today to do a little bit of an insight into outdoor learning. There's a small amount I can fit into this. So this is very much about sort of stimulating conversation and thinking. So, you know, what I talk about today, I would encourage you to sit for half an hour after this session, after everyone's session, after this conference is over, to think about how can I use that discussion to really embed that into my own practice and what we're doing. But in terms of where did it all start, outdoor play is as old as history. In terms of Margaret Macmillan, I think that's someone who we should all be looking to, because she really was one of the key pioneers and advocates for outdoor learning, and opened up open air nursery schools in the early 20th century in the UK. And she believed that the fresh air, sunlight, and outdoor activity were essential for children's health and development. And I think it's both positive and a little annoyance that in 1919 this is what we were talking about, and we still have to be shouting from the outdoors that outdoor play is necessary. You know, so it's we've still got a long journey to go, but we really do see the theory and the evidence as to why we need this outdoor learning. So that is a key person that I would encourage you to look up and think about how we can use that history to build on what we're doing now. For those of you that have studied child development and theory and all of that side, you will have been introduced to Froebel as well, who was the founder of the kindergarten settings. And he saw nature as a living classroom where children could observe growth, change, and life circles firsthand. So with that in mind, you know, it's not just about the outdoors, but sometimes about bringing the outdoors into the setting. You know, what are we seeing growing? How much can we learn from planting some potatoes out in the flower beds, or putting some herbs together that children can pick and use? How does that process stimulate that curiosity and that thinking? For both of these pioneers, it was also about thinking about those children that were maybe living in deprived areas. You know, what could they gain from these outdoor experiences? And how could that stimulate children from the very beginning? Which was the same for the Reggio approach. In Northern Ireland in particular, I've certainly found where we are, Reggio has a very big influence still on the way that we encourage our indoor and outdoor environment. So it's seen as a free flow space that we will touch on. And the environment is very much seen as the third teacher. Okay, so children are seen as collaborators with their learning and with their interactions with the community. And one of the lovely things about Reggio is that it's about getting out there. Within nursery schools, preschools, wherever you are, sometimes you'll find that we have these big fences, which, yes, it's important for safety, but we need to ensure that children get that sense of community and where they belong. So getting out and meeting those people is really important. Outdoor learning, it promotes the physical health, which is an obvious one, also that emotional health as well. And we are seeing a big trend in mental health conditions really rising in society. We need to encourage that from an early age that children can get out, enjoy nature, be free. I don't know about all of you, but when you go outside, often you do feel better for taking in that fresh air and giving yourself some time to space. That social development of being outdoors and that executive functioning, you know, improving attention span, impulse control, cognitive flexibility, all of those things, being outdoors, it develops those skills for the child. We have a big focus on the moment on sustainability. We teach children from their early years, you know, the importance of looking after our planet, of taking care. We're giving them that environmental responsibility for them progressing on. Janet, I'll move on to the next slide.
Thank you.
So I have had the opportunity to visit different areas to look at outdoor play, and it challenged me as well, because when I started on my research journey into outdoor play, I very much focused on UK and even Northern Ireland play and how that looked. Then I started presenting at conferences, maybe in Asia and Europe, and found that actually they couldn't be outside. It was too hot during certain times of the day, or there was limited space as to where it was. So I had to change my perspective and understand what were the key things coming from each area that we could share and we could learn. In the UK, in all of the four nations, we have a really rich history of educational pioneers and policy influences that are really impacting on what we're doing. We need to be those advocates and those role models of being outside, putting on our clothes, our big coats or our welly boots to go and jump in those puddles, not standing around, role modeling to those children. In terms of Nordic perspectives, we often find that there's a lot of risk benefit rather than risk assessments. Looking at, we have to ensure that safety is paramount, but children need risk. They need to allow themselves to climb trees, to fall over, to learn to get back up. All of those things are really, really important. And Nordic countries, you might find they're in the minus temperatures and they're still outside and still playing. So I would encourage everyone to think about their big coats for the later part of the year. And in terms of Asia, again, it was really exciting to see how maybe they're very built up in a lot of the cities, thinking about how do they utilize their community space so that planning can take on. And I took this photo of the hopscotch as I was walking down one of the city centres outside a big finance area, and there was that. So of course I was jumping while everyone was being really professional, but it is about making sure that, how can you use spaces outside of your traditional area? This photo is from Madrid, and again, it was very condensed area. And what we found here is the community sort of took over part of the city because they didn't have enough outdoor areas to go and spend time. So when I was with a nursery school, this was the space they used to go and play. And there were older people that were building things, reading a book, sitting around, just observing the children. And then there was vegetable gardens that families would come and pick vegetables to use for their dinner in the evenings. And then the children were just playing. They had chalks and paints and different things. And it was a really beautiful space. And it made me think about, often our parks here in the UK, we have our play parks fenced again with, keeping the children into a particular area. In our local park, we have that fenced area, and then we have a beautiful forest next to it. Why aren't we using the forest? We're using the swings and the slides, which are vital, but thinking about how we can utilize community areas. And I would really encourage you might not be able to set up a full community garden, but you might be able to invite your grandparents or your parents, your carers into the setting to do some gardening, to go out on a walk, or to do some reading outside, because all of those things are really valuable for the children.
I love that quote that you've got on there, Faye, that, to raise a nature-bonded child is to raise a rebel, a dreamer, an innovator, someone who will walk their own verdant, winding path. So that sort of lush, enriched, that is just a lovely quote, isn't it?
It is. We need a lot more dreamers.
We do.
So all of these things I'm not going to read in as we run a short period of time, but that free flow provision from the indoors and outdoors, no matter the weather, that sparks that children's curiosity. And if you're an apprentice, if you're working towards a level 2, 3, 4, 5, all of these things are going to be areas that you've touched on. And what I would encourage for students to do is to draw on that knowledge, that rich knowledge that your educators, your teachers and tutors have gone over with you, and to think about how can I put that into practice? And that's the joy of a vocational qualification, is it gives you those skills to really think about the different areas of free flow. And I would, just think about it's not just about the transitions, the inquiry and discovery, but also that connection. And I'm not going to have time to go into it in much detail today, but I would encourage you to look at Angie Play, which is an approach in China. And that was developed as a curriculum that had a joy of learning, where children can really just be themselves, build, explore, have that curiosity that moves between the two areas. And it's not that natural world connection. It inspires that awe and respect and emotional connection. And it does build in that cultural approach as well, because what children are learning is about the world around them, what's out there, what's growing, how do we play? So all of those things are really important. I'm going to whiz through these last few bits, but I'm really glad to be part of here. Whatever we're doing when we're planning for children, it's important that it's all built on the child's voice. There are times where we maybe put something together which we think in our head it works really well, and then the children will either use it a completely different way or they just won't be interested. And that's why we have to listen to the child. The more they're involved, the more we see their experience and see it from their point of view, the more that we can build an environment that is right for them. Get down to their level. Do your planning from the ground, not from looking down at it. Okay, think about what can they see, what can they feel, all of those 5 senses. Give the children, if you're maybe preschool, 4 or 5 years, give them cameras to take pictures. It's beautiful seeing children's photographs of the outdoor areas because they'll see it completely different. And listen to their stories. What's happening and how can you integrate that into what you're doing? So the outdoors really does support all areas of children's learning, as we've touched on it already. And we can get stuck in reviewing our own curriculum, the one that we follow, and thinking about what does that mean? We need to look outwards and learn from others as well. Watch some videos, read some things online. That's all about lifelong learning and your CPD. So this event, other events, it's all about what can you do to really support those children. Outdoors learning takes place in all areas, you know, and I'm sure that this is recorded, so you'll be able to look back. And if you're looking at Nordic outdoor kindergarten, Japanese learning, all of those ones, they draw on that holistic development for children, where there is that free flow, that multi-sensory, lots of storytelling. You know, look at that and think about how you can really make sure that outdoors isn't just a 15 minutes outside. It's something that is purposeful, that relates to different areas and supports those children. So thank you. That is a real whistle-stop tour, but I'm more than happy to answer questions today, later on. I'm all over social media, so you'll find me somewhere, but it really is a privilege to be with students today. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Faye. I think, you know, it just reminds us of the absolute significance of being outside, of how much we belong to nature and how much we need nature and the difference that can make. And I've often, you know, heard practitioners and parents alike, and seen it with my own eyes, of course, that the difference in children when they are part of nature, when they're allowed to be and almost feel free with nature, that sense of belonging, that sense of connection that you don't always find that all children will flourish without that. So you've reminded us of that, and certainly brought back lots of lovely happy memories for me in terms of taking children outside and just allowing for those connections. Thank you so much, Faye. Thank you. That was amazing. Paula is going to talk to us about STEAM activities. I know everybody is curious at the beginning when I went through the agenda. We've heard of STEM. Have we heard of STEAM? So this is going to be incredibly interesting for our learners. So let's just set the scene. So Paula is a published author, assistant lecturer in early childhood education at South East Technical College in Carlow Island, and a PhD candidate at Dundalk Institute of Technology. I hope I've pronounced that right. So Paula's PhD research focuses on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math in early childhood education and care. And Paula's most recent book, which I can certainly accredit, is Full Steam Ahead, a practical guide to implementing STEAM in the early years. So Paula, I'm going to hand the floor to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much. And just, can I change the slides, or is somebody going to change them for me, Janet?
I'll do that for you. Yeah, just give me the nod. Do you want me to move on?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay.
So, hi everybody, and I won't sort of reiterate everything that Janet just said in her lovely introduction to me there. And I just like to say that I'm delighted to be here talking to you today. I think my camera's a little bit dark, so if where my face is, so I apologize about that. Yeah, so I mean, as Janet said, my focus in my research and my practice is STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths in early years. I'm a lecturer here at South East Technological University in Ireland. If anyone knows Ireland, it's sort of in the southeast. And I'm just in the end at the end of my my PhD research. So I've done a lot of work, I suppose, researching with early childhood educators here in Ireland around trying to figure out, you know, what the barriers or what the facilitating factors, what they need to help them to bring more STEAM into their early childhood practice. And STEAM and STEM, as I'm sure you know, um, it's just becoming very prominent, there's a lot of focus on it right across Europe, in terms of the need to bring more STEM and STEAM opportunities into our early years practice for children. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today and try and link in a bit with your early years foundation stage curriculum as well in terms of STEAM. So just to and I sort of caught what Janet was saying there. I think you might have mentioned at the start, maybe around if people had heard of STEAM, but just to start back, I suppose, at the basics. So STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths. So a lot of people would have heard maybe of STEM. A lot of policy documents will talk about STEM. You might hear a lot on social media or the news around, you know, the needing more girls in STEM and STEM careers. But STEAM is not something different, really. It's just the next iteration of that. And I suppose the more research that's been done in this area, the more we realize that the arts is actually really key and really important, not just for supporting children to engage in the STEM areas, but really for everybody, you know, the ability to be creative and imaginative, you know, even for an engineer or a, you know, somebody working in technology is really important. And also, you know, we know that children express themselves through the arts. You know, we can see even in the pictures here, if children are making music and banging on a drum, that's the arts, it's music, but there's also maths there in terms of rhythm and beat, so that links into early numeracy. So STEAM is really everywhere, all around us, and hopefully I'll give you a little bit of an insight into that today. So next slide. So my definition of STEAM in my book is this, and there is no, I suppose, globally defined one proper definition, but from my research and my work, this is what I've come to sort of define STEAM as. So STEAM is an approach whereby knowledge is intentionally combined from across two or more of the science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths domains. This combined and transdisciplinary knowledge is then practically applied to create, innovate, build new knowledge and problem solve. So what do I mean by that? Just to break that down a little bit. Because sometimes people, and I know early childhood educators that I've researched with and have trained, sometimes they have thought, oh God, I don't have a background in technology or in science, so STEAM, I don't think it's something I can do. Or even if they say, well, actually we do some science experiments with the children, but that's not STEAM because it's only science. But you don't have to recognize and you don't have to involve all of the 5 individual areas of STEAM for an activity to be a STEAM activity, 2 or more. So say, for example, if the children are playing with Play-Doh, for example, and you introduce some other materials like sticks, and then they start to make sort of with the Play-Doh and the sticks, some kind of a 3D structure or a person or something else. That's engineering as well with the creativity of engaging with the Play-Doh and using their imagination. So that's a STEAM activity. So it doesn't have to be overcomplicated or complex. We don't need to be experts in any or all of the STEM areas or the STEAM areas to bring STEAM into our early years practice. And in actual fact, you probably are bringing a lot into your early years practice without realizing it. And then, so hopefully you'll get a bit of an insight into that today. And then it's building upon what you're doing already. So next slide, please. So as I said, STEAM just brings together the knowledge and skills from across two of the areas at least to problem solve, to create and innovate solutions. So if in the real world, if you think of, it's an example I use all the time, an architect and an engineer designing and building a bridge. That's STEAM in play there, because first of all, you have an architect who's designing, who's maybe drawing up plans. They're thinking about mathematical equations and angles, and how high does it need to be off the ground? What kind of weather is in this area? Does it need to withstand potentially hurricanes? So there's the science behind the weather there that they're bringing in. There's maths there, and then we have the engineer. They're building it, so they're thinking about the science behind the building materials, and stuff like that. So that's STEAM coming into play. And then if you think and transpose that into an early years environment, and children building in the construction area with blocks, or maybe in the outdoors, they're taking tires and planks of wood and they're making a bridge, and they're trying to balance, and how long does it have to be, how high off the ground, so you can see where it comes into play when we transpose that into the familiarity of our early years environment and our resources. Next slide. So the benefits of STEAM activities for young children, there are lots of them. So, it fosters dispositions like their curiosity, building their imagination, using their imagination, coming up with their own ideas and hypothesizing, problem solving and testing and experimenting. If they build a tower and it falls over, why did that happen? Maybe it's to do with the fact that the blocks on the bottom were, too small, and the blocks on the top were too heavy. And, so they're thinking, okay, well, maybe I need to try this again. And they're trying something new. So that is, they're testing out and experimenting and using their imagination to find a solution to a practical problem. And also, if children are playing and working on something together, they're collaborating. So if you can imagine children outside playing in the sandpit area, and they're trying to dig a hole, and they're playing together, and they're coming up with some brilliant imaginative scenario and what they're digging the hole for. Maybe they want to fill it with water, or maybe they want to move the sand from the hole to somewhere else. How are we going to do that? Another child might say, why don't we put it into the trailer on the back of the bike or the trike? And they're working together, and they're collaborating, they're coming up with a solution to their problem, to be able to continue on in their play and their learning through play. Next slide. So as I mentioned there, so skills and dispositions. So when children are engaging in STEAM activities, they'll be supported to develop skills, dispositions and knowledge to find practical solutions to practical problems. So I gave a few examples there. To test and evaluate their ideas, to come up with solutions, to be creative problem solvers, to work together and collaborate with others in a team, and to communicate their thoughts and ideas. And all of these things are really, really important in the 21st century. in a world where we don't know what skills children are going to need in the future. We don't know what jobs are going to be. We just can't foresee that because of all of the innovation around technology, all of the emerging technologies like AI that are coming into play. So jobs are changing. We don't know what we're going to need. But if you look up any articles looking at, what kind of skills people are going to need in the workforce of the future, the skills that children will develop through engaging in STEAM activities, like being able to find practical solutions, like being innovative thinkers, being creative, being able to collaborate with other people and share ideas, regardless of, the jobs of the future and what they will look like and what roles are available. All of these skills are the skills that we're being told will be needed in the workforce of the future, regardless of the jobs. So they're really valuable. I was at a conference recently in Europe, in Latvia. It was a European Commission conference, and they were talking about digital competence. So being able to engage with, obviously, digital tools and digital devices. And I'm not just talking about using their smartphones. I'm talking about thinking about AI and all of that in the future. And I was asked to come along and to present around STEAM, which I did, and how STEAM helps children to develop digital competence. But it can help children to develop that skill without using digital tools, because to be able to engage, with digital tools and screens and understand what's real and what's not, what's AI, what's fake, how do we use AI appropriately in a way that benefits the world as opposed to something else. We need, though, to be critical thinkers. We need to be problem solvers. We need to be innovators. We need to be able to think outside the box and communicate and collaborate, and not just take for granted what we see in the digital world. So engaging with STEAM activities, even in an unplugged way, where we're looking at technology as tools, like diggers and shovels, as opposed to technology as having to be screens, will still help children to be digitally competent, because it'll help them to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, to engage in this 21st century world. And interestingly, the European Commission have actually included digital competence as a necessary basic skill that everybody needs to develop. So alongside numeracy and literacy, they've now added digital competence. And just to reiterate the point I was making there, that doesn't mean we have to be thinking of digital tools for young children. We need to be thinking about STEAM to promote critical thinking and problem solving, so they can engage responsibly with digital tools and be digitally competent in the future. Next slide. Okay, so I know our curriculum framework in Ireland is a little bit different to yours. So I was having a look at how STEAM, what it looks like in terms of the early years foundation stage statutory framework in the UK. And similar to our framework here, our framework is called ASHTR, which is the Irish language word for journey. And similar to the early years foundation stage, it doesn't explicitly state STEAM or STEM as a term, from what I could see. Now, our framework has just been updated, and a new version is coming into play for educators from September, and it does actually stipulate STEM and STEAM, which is great. But nevertheless, similar to your framework, even though I couldn't see it stipulating STEM or STEAM as a term in the framework, it's actually implicit there in the other terminology and the description of the other sort of skills that children need to develop in the early years foundation stage. So I was just looking at some of the foundational elements there. So if we're looking, I took these from the early years foundation stage, in terms of understanding their world and the world around them, and supporting children to do that in early years. I already spoke there sort of at length about curiosity and problem solving and how STEAM activities support children to do that. In terms of supporting them to develop mathematics and early maths and numeracy skills, number and counting, even in block play, that's engineering, but there's also number and counting. Patterns and shapes. So if we think about children exploring nature and learning about, science in terms of the world around them, and nature and biology and so forth, we can still bring in early maths in terms of recognizing patterns. So the patterns on a leaf, the patterns in a flower, how many petals are on the flower, counting it, even measurements, how tall is the flower, or how many leaves does it have, does the branch have, or measuring, maybe we're collecting rainwater, and how much rain did we collect? Do we have more than we did yesterday? They don't necessarily, for very young children, need to be able to count and measure, in terms of centimeters and milliliters or whatever, but they can certainly look at you know, if we made a homemade sort of water butt out of a 2 litre bottle, and had it outside, they can be supported to you know, critically look at, do we have more or do we have less? How much more? Is it a lot more? All of that, or is it a little bit more? All of those are early numeracy words that support the development of maths. So, you know, it's beyond just the numbers and the counting. In terms of expressive arts and design, you know, supporting children to design and engage in design thinking. So, you know, if children, again, I gave the example earlier of maybe building a bridge, whether that's even in the outdoor area, they're having to think creatively and design how should it look? What does a bridge look like? How do I design it to be functional? You know, can it take my weight? Does it span what I need it to span if it's over a puddle? You know, so they're doing all of this, and we can support them to do that even more by asking them open-ended questions, by just making sure there's materials and resources there to support all of this. In terms of the characteristics of effective learning, well, active learning through play. So our role really is to make sure the resources are there for STEAM activities. We can sort of present STEAM activities, or we can just have open-ended, loose parts, materials there so that children can, as they're engaging in free play, the materials to engage in STEAM-related free play are there. Lots of loose parts, lots of junk art materials, you know, lots of glue, lots of scissors, lots of, you know, stones and natural materials, leaves and feathers, anything that they can sort, and that they can think about the size or the shape or the colour, or anything they can build with, anything that supports inquiry-based learning. We can link back into STEAM activities. Asking children open-ended questions when they're engaging in any kind of activity, whether it's free play or whether it's sort of adult-led, is really important. You know, what do you think will happen if? What could you do next? If something unexpected happens, why do you think that happened? What could you do to change it? All of that fosters STEAM and critical thinking and problem solving and inquiry-based learning. Next slide. So I just wanted to give a little few examples. Now, as I said, a STEAM activity, you don't have to identify science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths all in one activity for it to be STEAM. Just 2 of them and it's STEAM, okay? But I sort of, I have an activity, so say here, I've called this a science activity, but I'm also going to show you where the links to the other STEAM areas are, okay? So this is a science activity. It might link into the early years foundation stage area of understanding the world. So an example of an activity, planting seeds, probably something you do with children already. It supports their understanding. It supports their understanding of growth, of living things, of things decaying, of how to care for the world around them, climate change, sustainability, any of those things. So in terms of the natural world, children will explore the natural environment. They can make observations. So they're becoming little researchers, and talk about changes that they observe, again, being little researchers in the natural world or in the plant, changes in the weather that might affect the plant. Maybe it wasn't sunny enough, maybe it's too wet, maybe it wasn't wet enough, and the different materials and resources that we need. So in terms of links to the other STEAM areas, well, you've got links to maths there. You know, it starts out as mainly a science-focused activity, but why it's a STEAM activity? Well, it links to maths. We're observing, we're counting, we're measuring. It might link to the arts. Maybe the plant grows flowers, or buds, maybe they're different colours. Maybe we're thinking about that. And then tools as a technology. So unplug technology. Remembering technology does not just mean digital or screens. Technology means tools. You know, in Stone Age times, we had technology in terms of tools, and we always have. So it's not just something that we need to think about in terms of digital tools. So the technology would be, what do we use to dig the hole? Well, we're using a tool. You know, what do we use to measure the height? Maybe we use a ruler. So there's technology there as well. So we have science, we have maths, we have arts, and we have technology there in that science-based activity. Next slide. In terms of the technology activity and children understanding their world, we can support children to use technology and coding and develop 21st century skills. And we can do that in a technological way using something like the Bee-Bot robot there. So that's a digital technological tool, but yet again, it doesn't have a screen. So we don't need to worry about screen time issues. And we can print out, we can use the Bee-Bot to code and follow the grid. So you can see there's a little sort of maze there they've made out of the blocks, and they're going to try and direct the Bee-Bot to, I think it's a horse at the end. But if we don't have the Bee-Bot, maybe we don't have the funding to buy resources like that, or we don't want to bring in digital technology, even if it doesn't have a screen, we can still support coding skills and technology and digital competence in an unplugged way. Print out and laminate the large different sheets of coloured paper there on the ground. Have sheets with different arrows and hold them up, and the children become the robot. So maybe 2 steps and we have the arrow going forward, one step going right, 1 step going left, 3 steps going back. They are following the code, they are being the robot, and we're guiding them through the grid. So we can do all of this. It's still coding without the digital, which is very affordable and accessible. And again, don't have to worry about screens. And the STEAM links there, in terms of maths, we have spatial reasoning, sequencing, directions, turn taking, teamwork if the other children are trying to guide them through the grid, resilience, trying to figure it all out. Maybe they take a wrong turn. Oh, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? What do I need to go? Which way do I need to go now? Problem solving and computational thinking. Next slide. So I'm conscious I'm coming up to the end of time, but I'm nearly finished. Engineering then. So if the main focus is an engineering activity, linking into early years foundation stage for expressive arts and design and maths. So for example, building a bridge. I mentioned that a few times just because it's a good one to illustrate. So it encourages planning, testing, revising designs. You can do it in the indoors with blocks and boxes. You can do it in the outdoors with tires or blocks or pieces of wood. And creating with materials. So children are using tools and materials to design and build. They're thinking about shape, space and measurements. So exploring spatial reasoning and problem solving. Is it too high? So is it too long? Is it too short? How am I going to get onto the bridge? If you look at that picture there on the right hand side, there's no steps up to the bridge. So thinking about, we could ask the children an open-ended question like, how am I going to get onto the bridge on that side? Do I have to jump up high? Can I jump that high? So you have maths there in terms of high. You're fostering critical thinking, asking them how, and you're making them to think critically about their design. Why are there no steps on that side? And then in terms of STEAM links, it's linking into science in terms of gravity, maths with height and distance, weight bearing, design. That's creativity and the arts, estimation, construction, collaboration, teamwork, problem solving. The list could go on and on and on. Next slide. And I think this is the last one I had in there. So a maths-based activity that I had here to link into the early years foundation stage area of maths. So the sample activity was pattern making. Now that could be with anything, but this is just a picture with beads. So to support recognition of patterns and symmetry and the creation of repeating patterns. So in terms of number, so children develop counting. How many black beads do I have in the stem of the daisy there on the left-hand side? They might need to be able to count the numbers, or it could just be thinking about, is it tall enough? Do I need more? Should it be shorter, wider? And in terms of numerical patterns, so children exploring patterns and sequencing and relationships. So in terms of the arms of the person being longer or shorter than the legs, for example. So comparing and reasoning and rationalizing and estimating. So again, just remembering that it's more than the numbers. And STEAM links. So counting, obviously there's maths, colours, the arts, design, the arts, pattern recognition. That can be the arts. It can be linking to the natural world. We're thinking about the biology of the human form there in terms of, the person on the right-hand side. What component parts are they made up of? The head, the neck, the arms, the body, the legs, the feet. Is there anything missing? What about hands? So things like that. So that's linking into science as well. And also symmetry. the two arms are the same length? Are the legs the same length? Do they need to be? Maybe they made them a different length on purpose because maybe the person is stepping up onto something or walking. So not always assuming that they should be the same length, you know. So that's where we can ask the children open-ended questions to find out their thinking behind it. Next slide. Okay, so that brings me to the end. I think I went a little bit over, so apologies for that.
No problem.
But it was a whistle-stop tour, and I could talk about it all day. You know, it's great to be able to talk to you all about STEAM, and I hope you got something useful out of it, and maybe you recognise some of your own practice or ideas you can bring into your practice. I'd love if you followed me on Instagram. I'm always sharing ideas and things. You can see my link there. It's Paula Walsh 77, or you can get me on LinkedIn. And the book also is available with loads of practical ideas for all the STEAM areas, and it's available online. But please do follow me on Instagram and reach out if you would like further information. I'd be happy to take any questions, or I don't know if you're saving questions to the end, Janet, or if we have time.
We've asked people if they can access the chat to pop those in there, just really for the sake of time. And if any questions do come either via the chat or via myself, I'll share my email at the end. Then we will reach out as well, Paula, to you and to all guest speakers to make sure that we're giving the most informed responses that we can. So thank you so much. That was amazing. And I think
no problem.
You know what's really resonates again with me, there's something from each guest speaker that is just hitting home, and I know it will be with everybody that's on our call today, is that when we think of those higher functioning skills, when we think about those healthy dispositions to learning that we've all been talking about so far, we sometimes neglect or take for granted the arts, as though that isn't something that can be of any sort of instrument to move things forward, and yet it's fundamental, isn't it? And part of everything that's there for young children to naturally explore and be involved in. So thank you so much for reminding us.
It is. And if I could just add one little thing in there, because you reminded me, because sometimes we can forget the babies and the under twos, and even something as simple as, you know, if you've putting different color paints in a Ziploc bag and zipping it down in a safe way onto a table for the smaller ones, if they're manipulating that with their hands, right, they're mixing the colors, that's a scientific experiment. So
Absolutely.
That's a really basic way of the arts and science. So, you know, it really is relevant to all children in the early years, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it puts the arts on that level. It's just like, yes, we might think of science, technology, engineering, mathematics. These are the things that rule the world. Actually, let's bring arts up in there and remember just how significant and critically important arts is to that whole holistic learning package. Thank you, Paula, for reminding us of that.
Problem.
And thank
Pleasure.
you so much for your time. Hello, everybody. I'm really delighted to be able to welcome you to our next guest speaker. So we're delighted to welcome Zelfa Ferguson today, and Zelfa is going to tell us all about her consultancy and the work that she does with children and young people, and the amazing journey that she's been on and to be where she is today. So Zelfa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I'm so pleased that you've invited me to speak to your students. I'd just like to share a little bit about the last 40 years this year since I first started my training as a nursery nurse, and just really pick up on some of the themes that there have been throughout my life and my career. So, as the first slide shows, this was November 1977. And at the age of 10, my first niece was born. And she was a beautiful baby, of course. And on the day that she was born, we went along to the hospital to visit my sister. And when everyone had been cooing over her for a while, they popped her down in her little cot. And I was just transfixed, and I stared at her for ages. And the midwife came into the room, and I said, "What can she do?" so the midwife's got this 10-year-old asking, what can this baby do? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know, I know that she's just lying there, but what can she actually do? And she said, oh, okay, she can hear. She can distinguish her mum's voice from other voices. She can smell. She can detect smells like milk and other strong smells. She can see a little bit when she opens her eyes, but it's all in black and white. But she's very, very aware of her surroundings. And although she can't regulate her body temperature yet, she does respond to what's around her. And I just thought this was so interesting, considering that this newborn baby was just lying there. And I think that's where my fascination with children's development started, right back then. So throughout this presentation, I am going to visit themes that include early years work, learning, my learning and the learning of others. Travel features heavily, dramas and drama therapy, and also about creativity and how we can use that to its best. So the next phase, please, Janet. On the following slide.
Has that moved on? It's moved on
No.
for me. Has it not moved on for
Ah,
you?
it has now.
Okay,
Thank
technology
you.
is slow, but off you go.
It gets there. Thank you. So at the age of 18, when I qualified as an NNEB nursery nurse, I went off to London from my home in Birmingham, from the second city to the first city. And I worked for about 18 months as a nanny. It was the opportunity to spread my wings a little bit and, you know, to be in the capital city for its culture and its diversity. And I looked after a little girl called Claire, who looks very much like the girl in this picture, who was very much like an angel on the outside, but she was very, very hard work. And what I love about this period of time is that there was so much growth for me and understanding of children for real. Some days I spent 24 hours a day with her, and it was such a significant period in my life. 40 years on, I am still friends with the family. So that was part of my
Lovely.
early experience as an 18-year-old. And then the next phase takes me to it's coming, I'm sure.
Let's move down this side.
Here we go.
Okay, brilliant.
So takes me to my first role working for the local authority. So after leaving London and coming back to the Midlands, I took a job as a classroom assistant, we were called in those days, in a primary school in the inner city of Birmingham. And even then, lots and lots of challenges, lots of families with quite significant needs in a fairly economically and socially deprived area. But I absolutely loved it. And shortly after starting at the school, the head teacher announced that there was going to be a new nursery built in September. And would I like the job of senior nursery nurse? So again, at 19, I had this wonderful opportunity as the first person appointed in that setting. And I was involved in choosing equipment, in ordering toys and stock. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. But at that time, I was starting to recognise that the perpetual learner in me needed a little bit of stimulation. So very quietly, I took an A-level in sociology in the evenings, which satisfied my passion for learning, but also took me on to the next phase in my life, which will be on the next slide. Here we are. So at the age of 22, I decided to start uni. So I did a teacher training course with honours. So it was a 4-year degree in early childhood education. So I was specialising with children between 0 and 7. I loved it, absolutely loved uni. I couldn't get enough learning. And really interestingly, my experience as a nursery nurse, doing all of those observations, writing them up, being used to looking for the tiny details in children's learning really came in handy during my training. I also worked every weekend as a housekeeping assistant in a hospital, so that I could manage my other passion, which is international travel. So amongst other places during uni, I visited India and Kenya and Paris, and just
Wow.
had an absolute ball. I loved my teaching practices. I loved the opportunity to be around children, and it was just a wonderful experience for me. I specialised in English and drama, but also in linguistics, which I know is a subject close to your hearts too, Janet.
Yeah.
And that took me into the 1990s, so we're still some time away from now. And then the next phase of my life and career was incredibly busy. So I took on my very first teaching job as a reception teacher in a very small school in Willenhall in the West Midlands. And over that period of time, I was teaching full time. I also decided to start a master's degree in drama therapy, which involved travelling to London one weekend every month. I was having clinical supervision and personal therapy. I was doing some lecturing. I moved into a role as an assistant head teacher. Then I set up a business as a children's drama teacher. I worked in Bedfordshire, in Suffolk, and then eventually came back to the Midlands. So that period of time was incredibly diverse. But again, you know, so many learning opportunities, so many challenges that I just rose to, and so many opportunities to continue learning for myself, and also learning about children's learning too. So after that, I then moved into a slightly different area, but still in the teaching capacity. So I got a job with the local authority in Walsall as an advisory teacher, and I supported families who home educate their children. And again, this was an opportunity to learn about how children learn. And what I discovered is that there are as many ways of learning as there are children. I loved the role because it meant that I was interacting very closely with families, supporting children's learning, giving them ideas, demonstrating my expertise in different learning styles. And I just absolutely loved the job. Then I got the opportunity to also work as an advisory teacher for behaviour in Staffordshire. So I was doing one job 2 days a week and the other job 3 days a week. And really it was at least one full-time job and one part-time job at the same time. So it was incredibly busy, but I absolutely loved it. And then the opportunity arose for me to actually take up a behaviour support role in Walsall, where I was already working. That led to me becoming the service manager of a team of 10 advisory teachers and behaviour support assistants. And in that role, I was responsible for delivering training and support in 72 primary schools. So again, this opportunity to have this vast array of experience,
Amazing.
Yes, it was the different ethos in schools, the ways in which schools interacted with families, the ways in which schools were part of their community. So it became a much, much bigger role, if you like, than that. And I also took on a supervisory role for the staff in my team, and also went into peer coaching. And again, absolutely loved it. And it also gave me the opportunity, with a regular salary, for lots more travel. So
I think you deserved it. You've squeezed an awful lot in at every stage so far anyway, and I know you're still very, very busy. It's incredible.
Absolutely. I think so far I've got to 11 countries, but I haven't stopped yet. I haven't finished yet. There's still lots more to come.
Fantastic.
So yes, so we're now into the 2010s. So this continued through until about 2019, which I'll talk about when we see the next slide.
That should be coming very soon.
It's here. It's here.
Fantastic.
So, as I said, a fantastic decade or so of working in very, very different roles. And then in 2019, something happened that I really wasn't expecting. The local authority in Walsall restructured, as they do from time to time, and our service was disbanded and I was made redundant. It's not an experience I'd ever had before, and it was quite difficult. It felt a little bit like sort of getting the sack, you're not doing your job well enough, so therefore we don't need you anymore. So that was quite tricky. So I took a little bit of time out, just to kind of, settle myself, ground myself a little bit, and also develop this passion for making cheesecakes. So I found as many different recipes for making cheesecakes as I possibly could.
I love this.
Which came in really handy, because the following year, in 2020, of course, COVID hit. And we were there in the middle of a lockdown, with limited contact with other people. Most of us weren't going out to work. We were working from home. And in my case, I was still trying to decide what I was going to do career-wise. So making cheesecakes was a great distraction. And what I would do is I'd make up lots of little individual cheesecakes in little ramekins and pop them into gift bags, and then drive round to my friends' houses, pop the gift bags on the doorstep, and then run back to the car and then ring them up and say, you need to open the door and see what's on the doorstep.
Wonderful.
And then come out and pick up these bags. And I'd have the most amazing responses, and it just lifted everybody, and it lifted me as well. And even the postman got some, and the Amazon delivery driver. I would just give them to everybody.
Fantastic.
So yeah, so it was an interesting period. It kind of showed me how resilient I am, really.
Yeah.
But it also gave me the opportunity to do some more studying. And so I took on board as many short courses, sometimes, an hour's webinar, sometimes a 2-week course, about all the subjects that I was interested in, but also things that I'd never considered doing before, like adult mental health, for example. And I've managed to cram in about 100 courses over 3 years.
Wow.
So during the lockdown, when I'd had a little bit of kind of, soothing myself, I applied for a job, again supporting families who home educate, in Sandwell in the West Midlands. It was an 18-month fixed term contract, and unfortunately the job didn't pan out quite as I expected it to. So when my contract came to an end, I didn't renew it. But by that point, I think I decided that I needed to step out of my comfort zone and do something quite drastic. So going from having a regular salary, working for the local authority, knowing that all of my bills and the mortgage was being paid, I decided I was going to set up my own business. And literally, I left my job with the local authority on the 31st of March and started my business on the 1st of April 2022.
Wow.
And I haven't looked back. So my business has now been going for 3 years. I have, since putting this PowerPoint together, launched my online shop, which I know, Janet, you have taken a look in.
I've taken a look and taken advantage of. There's some wonderful things on there, yeah, of which I have been a proud owner. Yeah, fantastic.
Which is lovely, and thank you so much. And of all of the things that I've done, the numerous things that I've done in my career, this is by far my favourite, and it is the best job in the entire world. It helps that I have a really accommodating boss. She lets me do exactly what I want to do. She's very flexible, yeah. And in this time, again, through some of these short courses that I've done, I've learned so much about business, because I'm not a natural businesswoman at all, but also about behavioural change and about that human behaviour that we all demonstrate, some of us in very different ways, and going right back to, the 10-year-old looking into my niece's cot, so many things about the way in which children learn and develop their understanding and their skills, and the way that we conduct ourselves as adults. There are so many correlations in the way that our early life affects us when we're older. So it's been the perfect job for me. And as it says there on the slide, I work with children and young people, schools, parents, professionals in all sorts of occupations. And I have some adult clients too, which I wasn't expecting when I first started the business, but is great because, again, it puts another sort of slant on the work that I do. I have now written and deliver 62 different training packages.
Wow.
And workshops. Again, when I started the business, I envisaged that most of my work would be in Birmingham and the sort of locality around the West Midlands. But I'm actually working in various parts of the country, including London, Kent, Manchester, Leicester, various other locations. And literally working with people from early years right through to higher education, and more work with social care. So I deliver quite a lot of training to foster carers, children's home staff, social workers. And one of the unique aspects of my job, I think, that make it so worthwhile and so valuable, is that I not only work with children in school, but I work with families at home. So, sometimes in my career, I would look at a child, any aspect of their learning or their behaviour, and I'd think, there's something that I just don't get here. I'm not really making a connection with the child that I can see in front of me and what's happening with them personally. And it's amazing because sometimes when you walk through the door of somebody's home, it just all falls into place and makes perfect sense. And because of my previous role supporting families who home educate, I'm very comfortable going into family homes. And what is quite telling is the way that the relationship sometimes changes because parents are on their own territory. And although I'm a teacher, they tell me things that maybe they wouldn't do if we were meeting in school.
Different environments bring different feelings and different thoughts, don't they?
Completely, yes. And one of the things that I always ask when I'm working with children where there are behavioural concerns is for parents to talk to me about the birth story. And again, it comes back to this theme of, you know, all of the events in a child's life. We know about adverse childhood experiences and how they can impact on children, but also how they can impact on us throughout our lives. And when the parent gives their birth story, so I ask them to literally go right back to kind of preconception. It also really illustrates sometimes the relationship between the parents and their child in terms of their experiences of being parented and their parenting. So again, it's a really brilliant learning opportunity for me. One of the other really satisfactory aspects of my life is that when I was on one of my numerous trips abroad to Ghana, I was doing some volunteer teaching where I met a young boy called Nuruddin. And while I was visiting his village, which is Larabanga, a tiny little village in the north of Ghana, he told me that he wanted his education to be better. He told me that in his village there's no school, there's no teacher. The only learning the children have is if volunteers like myself visited. And in the rainy season, nobody can get into the village or out of the village. So he just waits and waits and waits for a teacher to come. And that really resonated with me. And I held on to that idea, meaning to go back to Ghana the following year. But of course, COVID put paid to that. But what happened in May of 2002, just after I started my business, is that I set up a scholarship for Nuruddin. So he now goes to school.
Amazing.
It is. It's a 4-hour drive from home. So he is a boarder during term time and goes home during the holidays. And he has just finished his second year of junior high school. And in September, will start senior high school. And after 2 years in senior high school, he'll go to university and train to be a teacher. And
that's some impact you've had there.
I'm so proud and just so thrilled that he's, you know, really wanted to make this difference to his own life, but also to his village.
Yes.
And you know, the whole village pray for him. They're very proud. They're very, very proud of him. So yes, that's kind of all part of the package, really, as well as being a volunteer for the Children's Society. I'm a school governor. I sit on the West Midlands Police Stop and Search Scrutiny Panel, so I sort of analyse the body-worn camera footage from officers who stop and search people in the streets. Excuse me. I'm doing 3 diplomas all at the same time.
You never stop, do you?
In safeguarding, in behavioural psychology, and in body language analysis, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And it's kind of all in this package of what I do now. and it's second nature. So I know it sounds crazy to try and cram all of these things in.
Sounds a lot.
but I absolutely love it. And the two quotes that are on the screen now, "I trust in my inner wisdom and know all that I need is within me," have really sort of followed me through my career, particularly when there have been challenges, particularly when I've been in new and unusual situations. Every time I have a little bit of imposter syndrome where I can't believe that I'm actually standing in front of 200 people telling them about what I do or whatever that might be. And also, if you don't jump, you may never learn to fly. And so
powerful, that, isn't it?
Yes. And so my message to any students out there who are watching this recording is, make the most of as many opportunities as you possibly can. Take a leap of faith every now and again, and never limit yourself to what you think you can do. There's always something more out there that if you push yourself, if you get the right support, you never know, you might be able to conquer. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to let me tell you about my crazy career over the last 40 years, but one that I've absolutely loved, and been so privileged to work with so many children and their families and some amazing colleagues too. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelfa. I'm just going to stop sharing, and then we can say hello to you properly on screen. So thank you so much. Thank you for meeting us today and for sharing that wonderful story with us. Absolutely inspiring, and I know it will have inspired and touched a lot of people when they listen and watch the recording. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Janet.